Uh, this session, the title is Human-Machine Interface. As I briefly explained yesterday, the overall concept is that e-navigation is in fact user-driven, that we need to consider the human aspects of how well a system, service, or equipment performs based upon the human interface. Looking at the definition of e-navigation, this is clearly specified that, and I've highlighted in green, that the presentation and analysis of information is key to the overall concept, and that this is to be achieved by electronic means in order to enhance methods of navigation, whether it be birth-to-birth or related services and so on. I also briefly mentioned yesterday that there are specifics that are mentioned in what the vision is, a standard user interface, comprehensive systems for managing guard zones and alerts, for example, and in particular, an analysis capability to reduce human error. In other words, better decision support. These were also mentioned in terms of the solutions and the prioritized solutions. I've highlighted S1 and S4, harmonized user-friendly bridge design, integration, presentation of available information from graphical displays. Some of us went up to see some of the trials or the simulators that are being conducted here at Cal Maritime. In particular, I was impressed by what I saw with the heads-up display. These are also mentioned specifically in the ongoing work that's being performed by the correspondence group, in particular human-centered design and usability evaluation of navigation equipment. Just to put things in perspective, human-machine interface is the title of this session, and it's where the human, in fact, machine interact. It's where they meet. And if you look at this diagram that's, again, it's on this ergonomic site, you see different types of human interactions, whether it be visual, hearing, touch, tactile, other types of things, the various types of hardware that can be involved, and of course the software as well. There's also perhaps a broader category of human factors, which deals with the study of human-machine interface, and a variety of aspects to it, whether it be psychological, social, biological, safety characteristics. There's a term that's used often, ergonomics. I'm not an expert in this area, but again, these are all related. And there's other terms, whether it be human engineering or human factors engineering. The key thing, and I'll show my bias as I did yesterday, is that a system really is only as good as who is using it and what it's being used for. And I have this basic belief in my career that you give a good system to a mariner, and he or she will figure out how to use it better than those who developed it. That's my bias, and you won't hear a whole lot more on this because it's the speakers that ideally will be dealing with how a mariner interacts with the equipment for e-navigation. Okay, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Is Sam available here? We'll call this up. Did you hear that? Sam thought I was going to talk longer. I got it out of my system yesterday. Margarita?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm glad to see so many of you today. Not only the people are paid to stay. This is an okay volume for this early. Human perceptions is the name I was suggested to use for my presentation, and I interpreted it in several different ways, as you will see in these 20 minutes. I'm Margareta Lytzöft. I'm from Sweden, but I'm representing Australia because I've been working in the Australian Maritime College since January. So I'm still learning my way around the Australian way. My background is Master Mariner and a PhD in human-machine interaction on the bridge. And it's an ideal combination because it means I'm not only academic, which is sometimes when you work with seafarers is a little bit of a barrier. But if they realize that you speak their language and you understand at least a little bit about what their work is about, that's sort of, it works better that way. Just to give you some context on Australia, 50 years ago, Australia was poised to be the first country in the world to actually start broadcasting television. They lost that race to the UK and the US because they kept fighting about who's going to get all the channels, who's going to transmit what are the frequencies, things that are maybe relevant for us today. But today we're in there, right in there with the best of them, leading the development of this new technology suite. AMSA is working with the human-centered design and the usability evaluation, as Lee mentioned, and will also hopefully assist in the further development of the PNT. So we sort of caught up there. To be more decisive. I divided this into human perceptions into two groups. Which are the humans and what are their perceptions of e-navigation? And this is very high abstraction level, and it may be a little bit biased. The seafarers are, as somebody actually mentioned yesterday, expecting more complexity, and that's something they don't really want. The manufacturers are probably thinking there's going to be some more earnings here, because even as the first times e-navigation was mentioned, a couple of manufacturers stepped up and said, we have that. So even before it was defined or work started, somebody said, we've got it. Do you want to buy it? The operators are seeing more cost, unless we can convince everyone that there is also a benefit connected to this cost. And everyone, which was mentioned yesterday as well, think that the next generation will manage this. I think that's not really true. The millennials will manage this for a few years, but as you all know, technology develops much quicker than humans. It's only going to be maybe 5, maximum 10 years before we've got systems that they did not grow up with. And the rest of us, if we're still around, we won't understand anything. Remember how hard it was to program the VCR? We still got these microwave ovens that they look like a spaceship. And all we want to do is heat the food. We can't really imagine what's going to happen in a few years. Following on from what Lee said, the interface in any technological design is just the tip of the iceberg. The visuals and the interaction is the little bit, a couple of % of the whole thing, and I'm actually going to talk about the user and the model that you need to find out about before you start designing, before you even think about the interface. Because what they usually say to us as human factors people is, okay, you can go home now, we'll contact you when it's time to paint the interface. And then you can fix all the problems for us. Or you could tell us whether the box should be green or red. And we can't really fix any problems when we get to that stage, because all the functions and the task solving and the decision support that you built into the system that's going to be shown through the interface is already there. So contact us before. This is from a workshop in a European project, Cyclades, or Cyclades. I think we haven't agreed on how to pronounce that even still. The Greeks are very happy about this name. Nautical Institute was also in this workshop in my former university, Chalmers, on the west coast of Sweden. We invited Nautical Institute and made it into a workshop about human-centered design of ships, not only bridges. And we asked them, what are the benefits of human-centered design as you see it? And this is only a third of the board. There was a very lively discussion, and some of the ideas that they liked, and this is the person who's going to use it, not the guy who's going to pay for it or order it, but the end user. The user in focus, they feel really happy about somebody listening to them. The less workload stress we had mentioned yesterday as well. Hopefully that's going to be one of the benefits. Depends on if you take the user into account, doesn't it? Seafarers' livelihood was a little bit unexpected, but they say if something happens, it's my livelihood. I will be shamed, fined, jailed, or maybe I'll probably lose my job and maybe even never get a job again if something really bad happens with technology that wasn't designed with me in mind. Harmonization, of course, it was used in parallel with standardization. Economic benefits, many of them, and a couple of them that I especially like that they said is, if you do this work early on, you can use less money if you put it in the right place in the design procedure or process. Safety benefits and the public opinion, not only of the seafarer as an individual, but as your shipping company, which is becoming increasingly important with social media picking up everything in seconds. They said, we want harmonization and we want standardization, but as anyone who's ever spoken to a seafarer knows, the next sentence is, but. I want it my way. You have to make sure it fits me. Think about the special users, all the diversity of us, short, long, tall, strong, different nationalities, different training. Workplaces are different. It's not only the ships are different, but the workplaces on board are different. And we tend to forget the engineer's workplace and the cargo handling workplace and the ballast handling and the mooring stations and the lifeboats. The situations and the context of use are different. And they like pointing this out to us. We're different and we're specialized in the job we do depending on where we are and what's going on. The ships obviously are different and the time of day. This is just a little list. So the standardization is very hard to find on that level. So what we're battling now is on what level can we standardize? Is it on a very high level? Is it the S mode? Because if everything looks the same, then the manufacturers are not going to like us anymore, are they? If you ask people what they want, this is, a guy told me this, tongue-in-cheek. He said, I want my dog in the background on the radar because I can have it on the desktop. Why can't I have it on the radar? It was, of course, a joke, but, you know, this could be the effect if we allow individualization to travel too far. Instead of having the standardization, we need to find a nice balance of what's standardized and what can we allow them to actually change. And since I'm not a dog person, I would put my cat on the radar. He's a little guy, but he takes up a lot of room, as you probably know. And how do you get this information? This is something most of us probably has made this mistake. I made it for many years. I thought it was as easy as just going out to them and saying, what do you want? And I realized a few years ago that what we should be asking is, what do you need? Or even better, don't ask. Ask them to do their job, and you observe and ask questions and figure out what's going on and how can we best support this. Don't put the job on them because they are not designers or programmers. We observe the job, we go home, we do our homework, and we make solutions that hopefully fit. Because if you ask them what they want, and I've used this joke many times, you know, if a guy goes into the tool shop and he sees this really nice set of wrenches or something, and you've got one or two in the garage, but they're not as nice and shiny, and there's a few bits missing. You don't really need this, do you? But you want it. I want a new one. I want a new car. I want a wardrobe full of shoes, but we don't need it. Again, remember that the most important thing is to find out about the user, the tasks, the relationships, not really asking them to design the interface for us. Of course, they have very good input on that too. But where we should start is finding out what's really going on board. And how can we support that? This is a new one. I think I found it on LinkedIn. It's a really nice realization that comes from a shore side, that ECTIS has effects not only on board. The companies need to start thinking about, what does this do? Oh, our departments have to start coordinating. Talk about the budget. And I like to say you need closer relationships between purchasing and technical and the operators inside the organization, and I hope that includes seafarers, because then we're actually getting somewhere. Because maritime is more than the sea. You've got all the other players, and they're not always on the water. So one suggestion is one of the few complete human-centered design cycles that was ever made. It was the Platinum series of Sam Electronics, and we were proud to be part of it. And one of the things we learned from that, rather than the actual design, is who do you need to do it with? That is a multidisciplinary group, and the most important thing is to have someone on the inside who believes in this. If it is a manufacturer, someone relatively high up in the organization has to support you when it comes to the crunch and people say, we need this thing finished now. And you have to be able to have someone who says, no, you have to wait 2 more weeks or a month because we've got to do another iteration of the design cycle. You need end users, whoever they may be. We know that e-navigation has made a comprehensive list of various types of users. Human factors or similar people. And interaction information design, which we're not very skilled in, that's a different trade. Software programmers, of course, engineers, but also you need marketing. That may come as a surprise to you. We had a guy in our group, and he was the most difficult to please. Because up to now, he's probably, or she, is the only one who has contact with the end users, who gets the feedback from on board. What do they want or need or complain about and want serviced and fixed? And he also has a very good idea of what's going to sell. Because if we only did human factors or ergonomics design, we might end up with something that isn't really aesthetic and selling. So we need both sides, obviously, and innovation. There was, in the email when they invited me, there was a comment on big data and how that was going to overwhelm the seafarers. But my first thought was that shore side is going to want to use this. Obviously, I can't solve the big data. I'm relying on Michael Bergman to do that after me now on board. But my first thought was shoreside is going to want to suck lots of information from the ships because it's available. And I just wanted to pose a few questions there. Think about what we have. What do you actually need before you start picking that data up? What do we need in the future? Collect based on needs and an analysis plan. That was mentioned also. Similar comment yesterday. You need to have an analysis. And make sure it's sent automatically so you don't put an extra job on the seafarer to actually send these big blocks of data to whoever is asking for it. And when you start considering wanting to pick up data from the ship, compared to other data collection exercises we've done in the past, which didn't really turn out that well, and I'm thinking about near-miss reporting, accident reporting, which is more a pro forma exercise today, and the information, if it's useful when it comes ashore, is almost never used. And if something happens to it ashore, it never comes back. So there's lots of data being collected just because you can. And I just want to warn you, don't do that. Make sure you know what you're looking for. If you were a researcher, a student, we would call it fishing. If you don't know your question, you're just out fishing, and you hope that something's going to land on your hook. To finish off, before I change the subject slightly, I found this a few months ago by Fred Pott, and I really like the picture because it shows you there's a couple of important choices to make, and I'm definitely not competent to make that, but do we need the plug-and-play system? And these technologies are only the ones on the ship, and I could think of a few more on the ship, and then you have to connect to the shore side. But if we don't, this is actually happening today. There's 3 or 4 major car manufacturers who have decided to work with Apple, and 3 or 4 more are lining up. And this is not the unknown brands. This is Mercedes, BMW, Volvo. And that's not what we want either. If one vendor locks in, we're in trouble. So I'm going to change the subject slightly because I showed this video to some people yesterday, and they said, "Oh, are you going to show that tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh, I hadn't planned to." Then I timed my presentation, and I saw, yeah, well, maybe I can. It's a few of the needs we've picked up through our studies during 7 years in Chalmers is that one of the very important things people want is communication. This is not only on board, but the example I'm going to show you is primarily on board, but the circles can be widened to include shoreside later. We think we need more coordination between the jobs being performed on board. We don't really see a reason for separate procedures between deck and engine, because we've all got actually the same end goal. And we realized in our studies that many of the tasks are parallel but shifted in time. The engineers need to know 2 hours before because we need more power for the thrusters. And then the captain needs to know 1 hour before he's going to be on the bridge, and then we need to wake the guys up who are going to do the mooring half an hour before. And this is all part of the same task, but it's done on the separate departments. And when we're on the subject of separate departments, there's so few people left on board. Yeah, we really need to cooperate. This is not about deck and engine. It's not about us and them anymore. It's not about the deck monkeys and the engine donkeys, as somebody said. We're all in it together. And in this world oriented with technology, we thought, how can we make these soft skills work better? And the obvious answer is there are technology. So we're actually going against a little bit of what I just said, the user needs, but we did know about the user needs, but we need to support them. So what we found was we put some people together, engineers, deck officers, over a table and put a big chart on there and said, if this was an interactive display, what would you talk about? How would you plan your voyage together? And we got long lists from every group, and they all left very happy and said, nobody ever asked us to work together like this before. Can we be involved in the study further? And I'll show you a movie that it's a mock-up. It doesn't work yet. It looks very cool. There are, as Ulf said yesterday, the actors are not professionals. But I think this would get the Oscar for the best foreign movie. The first thing we did was show that you can make a secure login to this table.
Morning, Thomas. Morning. You okay?
May you recognize the famous researcher Thomas Porat, who is now a captain in this movie. Okay. We're going to do the maintenance planning for next week, Chief, and I thought we'd some reason so we would not get tangled in each other's jobs.
Yes. Well, high priority for myself is maintenance on these valves.
Okay,
here.
yeah.
And I know that we have planned maintenance for the deck crane.
Yeah, we're going to be greasing it. So this area is sort of out of bounds for a day or so.
So I will keep my men out of here.
Yeah. And there will later be painting here. So we want to avoid the ballasting in case we ruin the paint with the overflow.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. I'll keep my our activities away from these areas. Is there a way that we could put a time limit on this?
Yeah. Well, weather's going to be good, so you can start directly tomorrow, Monday, and we will get this on Tuesday, and this will be continued
Throughout the week.
Throughout the week, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, can we get a printed copy so I can distribute it to my crew?
Yeah, sure. We'll make a couple of copies, and then if you want to make changes, just get back to us.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll do the cooperative planning pilot to pilot. I'll give you a rough idea of where we want to go and what's going on as we're leaving Göteborg, and we can do the pilot planning passage later.
Yes, we do that.
We'll be leaving the pilot somewhere there,
Yeah.
and we'll just sneak around this buoy. And somewhere here, depending on the weather, I want to add an event here. Depending on the wind, I'd like you to arrange for about an hour of a lifeboat trip, because we have some time before we have to get to the next place.
Yeah, no problem.
And
Yeah, there is. I don't know if you've heard, but there is an area here. Some sort of. I don't know. We got a message. There's some sort of special bird there, so they want us to be careful there. So we use the southern fairway out. So.
okay, we'll put a little note here.
Yeah.
Bird saving.
Yeah.
Code.
Do you want that to be in time,
No, somewhere on the route.
along the route?
Yeah, depending on the weather.
Yeah.
And as soon as we're checking this, the weather is going to come in any minute now, so we can adapt our planning to it.
Good,
And I also know the engineers want to be told when we get outside the 12-mile limit for the grey water.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. So this is the bird thing.
Yeah.
So this is just a demonstration, and what you saw were PDFs that we were interacting with. But the idea is that they would be real charts and real drawings that you could drill down into and see details. And obviously the voyage plan should have included an engineer. We realize that. And then we think if this could be one in the engine room, one on the bridge perhaps. This is a complete voyage plan for the ship. It's similar to what Ulf mentioned yesterday. The voyage gets a number. And later perhaps we can put one of these in the boardroom of the shipping company. You've got your ship in the boardroom. And what I said, the weather's going to come in soon, that was something we really want for the information from shore to come in, as it were, on one side, and then everything, you just swipe it and it gets sent. Then all the administration and all your databases would be in here, and you wouldn't have to make a new personnel list or customs list for every new port, because that would be just picked up by them, because all the data's already in there. A little bit of work has to be input still. But that was our idea. It's still ongoing at Chalmers, and we've got one in Tasmania. So the next idea we'll be doing is connect ourselves between those two tables and maybe do some multicultural studies. We can think this can also firstly be used as a training tool. We talked to about 50 seafarers to figure out what they wanted before we made these 4 demonstrations. And by that, I'll just say thank you.
Per the way we've been doing it, we will wait until the panel discussion for questions or comments or views to be expressed. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Again, the biographies are in the program, as well as the titles of the program, is Michael Bergman.